we as children learn to become adults. I think most of us are taught that being grown up is about learning to fit into the world, to adjust better to it, so that it rewards us for our adjustments with success. So, which are the parts that we are taught will ensure the success, and which are the parts that we are told are superfluous to this journey of success? I think if we really stop to think about it, the parts that we are taught to minimize and reduce are those parts that are pleasurable, emotional, sexual, the world of desires, longings, confusions, doubt, and pain, feelings, in short. We see these variously as taboo, as inefficient, as too much, and they're meant to be controlled for us to fit into the world. There is something these parts that we stigmatize so much in ourselves have in common. And that commonality is that they cannot be counted. But because they cannot be counted or controlled, does that mean they do not count? If our idea of reaching out to people is simply about how many we reach, not how we reach them, then however big that number, can it ever be enough? If we are being taught to belong in the world or given chances to fit into a world that in itself creates inequality and injustice and exclusion, are we really helping to create an equal world? As importantly, can we really imagine equality and justice if we not only treat parts of society as lesser and stigmatize and marginalize it, when in fact we stigmatize, marginalize, and look down on parts of ourselves too? When we treat parts of the human being themselves as unequal, can we imagine equality, let alone practice it? If we edit out parts of ourselves that don't fit in and are included in a homogeneous and homogenizing system, can this really be called inclusion? And if it is merely checking the boxes of how many identities it includes without being transformed by those identities, is it really inclusive, or is it always leaving something or someone out? Is our idea of inclusion therefore in danger of being built on an idea of exclusion? These were questions in our mind when we started Agents of Ishq. And we did a landscaping exercise in which we learned some very interesting things about young people who are the recipients of programs meant to provide this inclusion and equality. And that is that they spoke about some subjects very easily in public. And these subjects were always to do with violence or difficulty. Some subjects which they discussed in personal with a trusted trainer or a few friends. And these were often to do with the difficulties of social freedom vis-a-vis, say, home and community. And there were some, in fact, not some, many, a long list of topics they never discussed with anybody. And those were almost always to do with hurt, pain, self-hate, shame, desire, longing, and pleasure. We often talk about how school teaches us to pass exams and just write the answer the teacher wants to hear. And I suppose that's what we carry out in the world. And we are too often trained or training people to say things the teacher, the trainer, the instructor, the boss, the funder wants to hear. I mean, think about how we talk about sex. We talk about it as violence, disease, exploitation. We do not talk about it as pleasure, possibility, creativity, or life itself, all of which it also is. So naturally, when we talk to people about sexual health and sexual rights in this way, that is what they respond with, not with the more with the less definable parts of their wishes and desires. We pay attention when people talk of these negative experiences because that confirms for us that we are helping them in numbers. The other experiences we don't count, maybe because we do not have a language to count them in and a way to learn from those accounts. But they are also accounts, just not those accounts which tally up nicely, right? They're accounts of experience which build the knowledge of people and build on the knowledge of people and the world as much as anything else. But when we do this, we are in danger of seeing people in terms of lack, not in terms of their capabilities. We risk seeing them with an unequal gaze instead of as co-travelers in a journey of change, which is also another word for life, by the way. So where do people go to experience these hidden selves? They go to the world of enjoyment. Bollywood, TikTok, the internet, pornography, books, music, fashion, taking selfies, a world that we normally tend to not take seriously because it is pleasurable. It's a world we treat with embarrassment or shame because it accommodates human emotion and pleasure. And when we are in it, also we say it's our guilty pleasure. But what could we learn if we paid attention to these parts of the self and the world? It's a question we asked ourselves at Agents of Ishq. We created a space which is saturated with pleasure. It's enjoyable. It incorporated the popular culture young people enjoy from Bollywood to the internet meme, and it was non-prescriptive. Here, sexual health and rights, but also sexual desire, the world of emotions and feelings and doubts and relationships was treated on par. And all feelings and emotions and questions about sex were treated equally. We believe this made us agents of Ishq, and we asked other people, "Do you want to be an agent of Ishq?" We didn't say we wanted to reform them. We asked them what they wanted to be, and they replied with an incredible diversity of interpretations of the term agents of Ishq. I think that these experiences changed the way we thought and reshaped the space. We are so used to telling others what is good for them. But the truth is that people struggle to carve out a life for themselves, one that is about health and opportunity, but also happiness and self expression. And their experiences are a place of great learning that can reshape our imaginations. So, as people began to share their ideas and experiences, unique things happened. One is the co creation of the space that got reshaped on mutual terms. And I cannot stress that this is the central tenet of pleasure enough, that mutuality and consent, something that shaped itself together and also sowed the seeds of its future growth. The second thing that happened was an organic and incredible diversity, because people were not being brought in only on the basis of identity, but of their experiences. They were not being asked to enumerate their difficulties so that they could be categorized as an identity, but rather to share what they had learned from their own lives. And so there were no boxes and no hierarchies. And it created a place where people could meet on an equal footing without erasing their differences. This genuinely inclusive frame where you don't check in with an identity card alone while keeping half of your complex human self out of the picture, a place of solidarity and connection, which also acknowledges that there are great differences amongst us, which cause us difficulty. This creates an intersectionality of identity, but also an intersectionality of the human being, each person complete with all aspects of themselves, no part lesser than the other. I believe that the purpose of justice is to allow us to be who we are and to be respected for that as a whole. If we cannot accept each other as complex wholes, but treat people as innumerable, quantifiable commodities alone, I don't think we can imagine a truly diverse world, because the frame that we are fitting people into is one of sameness, of a single imagination and a single story. I'd like to end with saying that people often ask us if we have been trolled because we talk about sex on the internet. And the answer, surprisingly, is that we have never been trolled. I believe it's because we do not speak the language of aggression and reforming somebody who is imperfect and needs to be fixed, but rather a language of exchange, inclusion, and love, which honors the human experience and gives it dignity through art and offerings of pleasure and enjoyment. I believe this creates a confidence in the self, a belief in the right to be human, which is human rights, and a world where we do not need to fear change, but can define change mutually and walk towards it hand in hand. Thank you.